What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 98. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on another episode, another journey where we discuss a new movie that we got to check out in theaters or in streaming. On this episode, we break down our pros and cons, our favorite moments, and our favorite shots. And then we also recommend whether you should check this out in theaters or wait for streaming or maybe even skip it. And then also, as a final segment, a little bit extra, we also decide whether this movie, after one viewing, is timeless. Is it something that you could rewatch over and over and over again and add it to your movie collection? Before we talk about this week's new movie, though, little housekeeping items. Timeless Movie Podcast is now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So give us a follow on any one of those platforms where you prefer to listen to your podcast. And if there's a chance, give me some reviews, some comments. Would love to interact with you guys about the new movies that are going to be coming out in the future, and just to kind of really get some good discussion, some agreements, some disagreements about what we think about these new movies. Definitely give us a follow. And also in the description of this video or audio podcast, I put up my socials for Instagram and Threads. That way we can interact a little bit more. And you can also get a heads up as to when I drop new episodes of the Timeless Movie Podcast. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this week's movie, which is Gladiator II by Ridley Scott. It has been 24 years. It's a 24-year follow-up to the original Gladiator that came out in the year 2000. I was super pumped to want to check out this movie because I really loved the first film. I actually just rewatched it with my girlfriend and my brother, and it just blows me away at how incredible it is and how it really stands the test of time. The music works so well. The acting and the performances by Russell Crowe and Connie Nielsen and Joaquin Phoenix, everything just works and flows so well. And so I got really pumped to know that there was going to be a sequel. I actually ended up checking out the trailer for Gladiator 2. And I got to say, after I checked it out, I was excited. I was ready to watch it. There wasn't anything that kind of pulled me away from like, hey, maybe I shouldn't check this out. I was going to check it out, but it didn't get me hooked. And I was a little surprised because, considering that it's like a film that has a very big and epic type of a story to tell, I was really hoping for it to kind of really give me some goosebumps and really get me into a position of like, I cannot wait to check this out. But I just thought the trailer was good. So again, it didn't leave me with any kind of sour taste, but I was just hopeful that the movie could really leave me wanting more after that theater experience. So again, just a little bit of my background and thoughts in my mind as I watched the trailer. Let's go ahead and transition into the non-spoiler thoughts now that I got to check out Gladiator 2 on opening night. All right, Gladiator 2 was a pretty good movie. It had a lot of great things going for it. To me, I feel like it captured the epic scale of the city of Rome really well, just like the first film did. You see the Coliseum and how they kind of have the camera really kind of just show you the scale and how big it is. They show you how much and how massive the city has grown since the first film. And so the way that they were able to capture that kind of feeling, I thought it worked in this movie and almost kind of hit that same level of the scale that they were able to accomplish in the first Gladiator. Also got to call out some really good performances. This cast was star-studded. You had Pedro Pascal, you had Denzel Washington, Paul Mescal, you had Connie Nielsen, you had Joseph Quinn. So many great performers all in one movie, and everyone had their moment to kind of at least shine in certain scenes. So I really got to call it out. Again, some good performances that played out throughout Gladiator 2. But really, what we're here for, right? The action. The action delivered in Gladiator 2. I really enjoyed the different types of cinematography and the sequences that they were able to pull off and the editing, really well done. So again, those are things that I really enjoyed. Now, why I think it's pretty good and not great is because of a couple of things. Just right off the bat, the reason why I don't consider this movie great or amazing is because I feel like it has to do with the main character of Lucius. Something about his character just kind of, it didn't really work. We'll dive into a little bit more details about that in the cons, but that's really one of the aspects of why I really couldn't consider this movie great. Also, there's just a lot of things that are going on with different types of characters. So although there are a lot of star-studded actors, and everyone kind of gets their moments, I feel like those moments don't hit as emotionally hard as the first film did. So again, there's a lot of different things that are kind of playing out on the screen, and again, a lot of good stuff, but it just didn't move me as much as the first film did. So again, those are the kind of things that are keeping it from being great. Just to kind of give you guys a little of a synopsis about Gladiator 2, this film revolves around the character of Hanno. And so it picks up 16 years later after Maximus's death in the first Gladiator. And now you're following a character named Hanno, who is played by Paul Mescal. And he is basically a man that is living in the city of Numidia. It is a free city, but right from the get go, you then see the Roman Empire and the Roman army coming to invade the free city of Numidia, to take over it and to have it be a part of the new Roman Empire and just to continue to grow and expand. And so immediately you see the Roman Empire as this evil force, and you are now trying to root for Hanno to make sure that he keeps his city free. But at the end of that battle, Hanno not only loses his freedom, he loses his city, and he also loses his wife. And so a lot of things just end up impacting Hanno right from the beginning. And as you would expect, it kind of follows a very similar story beat to the first one, where Hanno ends up getting purchased as a gladiator, and he is now basically owned by the character of Macrinus, who is played by Denzel Washington. And so Macrinus ends up utilizing Hanno as an instrument. He wants him to gain some success. He wants him to win some battles in order to hopefully try to find a way to gain more power in Rome. And so as you see these two characters kind of go through the story, you have Hanno, who ends up winning more battles, ends up winning a couple of fights in regards to the Coliseum, and then eventually his goal is to get revenge and try to kill the General Acacius, who's played by Pedro Pascal. General Acacius was actually at the battle where they took over Numidia, and so he has his sights set on Acacius in order to take him down. But as the story goes along, you start getting more revelations about Hanno's past, more about who he truly is, who his connections are to Rome, and really get a sense as to who he's related to. So, really good stuff. Again, I'm not going to spoil too much in this section, but again, that's kind of the general sense of the story and what's taking place. Overall, I had a fun time at the theater watching this movie. Again, it's a good movie, not a great movie, unfortunately, but I would still recommend you guys check it out. This movie, again, because of the fact that it's so like the epicness that they're trying to show on screen, it just lends itself to being watched in theaters. The sound of the gladiators battling, the sound of the different types of situations that the characters are in within Rome, it just works so well in a theater experience. So I would still recommend you guys watch it. Just don't have these high expectations as compared to like the first Gladiator film. Like if you come in thinking, hey, this Gladiator 2 has to be as good as the first one, I feel like you're going to get let down because it's not that. It's a different kind of a story, different characters, similar beats in essence. But if you have those expectations at a minimum, you will enjoy the film. But if you come in expecting it to be just as epic and just as great as the first one, then I think you're just not going to enjoy your experience that much as well. So those are my overall recommendations. Again, I still recommend you guys go check this movie out. Now, though, let's go ahead and spoil a little bit more about the movie. Let's talk about our pros and our cons. So again, if you have not checked out Gladiator 2, make sure to jump out of the video, watch the movie, then come back. That way you can kind of agree or disagree with my opinions about this film. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the first pro that I have to call out, which is I really enjoyed the arcs of General Acacius, played by Pedro Pascal, and Macrinus, played by Denzel Washington. Both of their character arcs of where they start and where they finish completely caught me off guard. It subverted my expectations because, like I mentioned in the synopsis, you have General Acacius, played by Pedro Pascal, and he is basically the main general of the Roman army. He does what the emperors want him to do, and so he continues to take over different lands and different cities. And they set him up as this villain, this antagonist. But within 10 to 15 minutes of his story, you then realize that he actually is not the bad guy. Actually doesn't care about the emperors and actually even wants to overthrow them. So that entirely just completely changed my perspective on his character. And you even start rooting for him as the movie goes on. And then you have Macronus, played by Denzel Washington. He starts off as a character very similar to a character in the first film, where he kind of buys and he owns these gladiators, and he tries to just kind of give them their freedom and kind of put them in a better spot than they normally were in. But as compared to the first film, Macronus, he actually doesn't care about these gladiators. He actually just wants to use them to gain more power and eventually get him a spot on the Senate in Rome. And then eventually his ultimate goal is to actually take the throne of Rome. And so it completely flips it on its head, where you're thinking that Macronus is actually on Hanno's side. At the end, he's not. All he cares about is himself. You see the schemer that he is. He's always scheming, always planning, trying to manipulate and pit people against each other. He, at one point, even pits the two emperors against each other. And so, really interesting stuff. But I really enjoyed how they were able to make these two characters of Acacius and Macrinus completely 180, bamboozle me, because I thought that I was like, okay, yeah, Acacius, he's going to be the antagonist, he's going to be facing off against Hanno, and no, at the end, it's a complete different story that they were trying to tell for these characters, and I really enjoyed that. Second pro for me has got to be the action choreography that played out throughout the movie. Everything was just so well done, whether it was hand-to-hand combat, whether it was swords and weapons that were being leveraged, whether it was ships battling in the Coliseum. They actually put water in the Coliseum, and they had like a actual ship battle. That all of that was done so well. So not only, again, the choreography between the stunt doubles and the actors was really awesome, but also the way that they edited the different action sequences, the way that they didn't have to excessively cut in order to hide what was going on. Everything was just shot so smoothly and so crisp that, again, it just adds to the intensity of the various scenes that were going on in the film. You know me, guys. I love action movies, but I hate, and it is a pet peeve, when they decide to end up cutting a lot of different types of scenes together and editing it very weird. I hate when they do shaky cameras in order to kind of make it seem like if there's more tension than there really is. All that stuff is just fluff, and it just does not make the movie going experience any more fun. And so I really appreciate that Ridley Scott and the team did not do that. They didn't heavily edit the action sequences. They kept it very real, very raw. That way you could see what was going on. And it makes you feel for like, okay, like what's going to happen to these gladiators? You see some gory stuff, and so you're like, okay, that Hanno, who's the main character, nothing's going to happen to him, but he could get hurt, right? So I really enjoy when the action can actually elevate certain scenes and make it feel more visceral and feel more real. And it makes me appreciate it in the long run. All right, another pro that I have is actually the costume and the production design for Gladiator 2. I really loved the attire that a lot of the individual characters were wearing within the film. Whether it was Hanno wearing a lot of the gladiator uniforms that they would have, whether it was Macrinus wearing the robes and looking all extravagant and like looking really rich, really. Then you have all of the attire of the Roman army. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not a historian. I don't know what is accurate and what's not accurate, but I don't care. As long as what their attire and what they're, living in this world of Gladiator 2, if it's believable, that just makes the movie going experience just a lot more fun, because it kind of takes you into that world of like, yeah, would they really wear that? And so again, what they were wearing and what the actual designs of the actual throne rooms look like, all of that looks so cool. There was this one specific scene that I want to call out where you have Hanno end up doing a hand-to-hand combat with another gladiator. They went like 3 rounds, and they ended up using some weapons, but a lot of it was just their hands fighting each other. And instead of doing it in the Coliseum, they're actually doing it in a throne room where you have the emperors just watching. And it's very claustrophobic. You have people around them, but then you see the huge pillars, the curtains, the way the light goes into the room. All of that just adds so much to the experience of what you're watching on screen. So again, shout out to the costume designer, the production designers. You guys really nailed it with how they represented Rome, either in the nice parts in the throne rooms of Rome, and even outside of the Colosseum, where you just see a lot of homeless, a lot of people that just have nothing. That how they just designed all of that really adds so much to why I really enjoyed those pieces of Gladiator 2. And then final pro that I want to call out is I actually really enjoyed the way that they represented the afterlife for Hano. I'm gonna spoil it right here. Hano is just the alias name that he is given, but his true name is actually Lucius. So he's actually the Prince of Rome and is actually the same character, the same kid that came out in the first Gladiator film. This time, Lucius is played by Paul Mescal. And so he has this alias name called Hano because he ended up kind of giving up his life as the Prince of Rome and eventually kind of has to recapture that name. But I really appreciated how they represented Lucius's afterlife. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the movie, you end up witnessing the loss of his wife during the battle against the Roman army. And at one point, Lucius gets knocked off, off the side of a cliff. He falls into the ocean. And what's so cool is that as his body sinks to the bottom of the bedrock of the ocean, you then see him wake up, and then you see his wife from very far away. Everything is tinted like a dark gray, dark blue. And then you see his wife get on a raft, and there's two dark cloaked figures taking her away, almost like signifying death. And that was kind of his afterlife, like almost like him being underwater and seeing his wife get taken away. And it was really cool. And I really appreciated that they made it different compared to the first film, where Maximus, whenever he would see and get a vision of the afterlife, he would be kind of walking across a crop field, and he would see his wife and his son running to him or walking to him. And there was a different color hint. It was kind of like a darker blue, but it would just be something completely different from what you were normally seeing in the movie, so that it can signify that this wasn't really real. It was just something that the main character, the main protagonist, was envisioning. But again, I really appreciate that they made the afterlife very different and unique for Paul Mescal's character of Hano or Lucius. So again, I really appreciate that, and I wanted to call that out in this pros section. All right, let's dive into some of the cons. I mentioned it in the non-spoiler section of why I thought this movie was good but not great. And here's some of the reasons why. Although the movie does feel authentic in regards to the costume design, the production of the city of Rome, I just could not get invested in this world that they were building. And that's unfortunate because I really do want to kind of have these situations where I'm watching a movie and I get to escape. I get to live in this world. One good example that I can call out is Dune Part 2. Came out in earlier 2024. As soon as that movie starts, you are completely swallowed up by the world of Dune. You're in the sands with the Fremen. You are dealing with what's going on with the Harkonnens. Everything that's going on with the main characters, you are following, and it's like you're part of this story. And it just completely takes you into that world. And you forget that, like, oh yeah, like, I'm just watching a movie. That's what I was hoping I can feel for Gladiator 2, and I just never felt that as I was watching the movie. And that's unfortunate. And that, again, kind of calling back, that's what I felt when I watched the trailer. Like, the trailer never really got me completely hooked. I enjoyed it. I appreciated what they were showing me, and I was interested in finding out, well, what is this story going to tell me? But I was never actually, in that moment or situation feeling like, yeah, I'm in Rome. I'm with Lucius, or I'm with General Acacius. Like, it never felt that. And that's totally a personal thing, right? That's totally on me. Maybe you, as an audience member, you felt what I'm trying to feel. Maybe you did get completely taken over by this story and you were in the world of Gladiator 2, but I just can never get involved as I wanted to be, which is unfortunate. One of the things that I didn't really also connect to was the main character of Hano or Lucius, played by Paul Mescal. This has nothing to do with Paul Mescal's performance. I thought he did really good, but something about his character in the first half of the movie, I just could not get behind him, and I could not really root for him. And it wasn't anything that he was doing. Again, Paul Mescal is a good actor. I know he's come out in good stuff, and he's going to continue to come out in good stuff, but something about the way that his character was kind of going through the first part of the movie, they were trying to either compare him too much to Maximus in the first film, and I think that was just the wrong direction to go to. I don't know, something about the first half of the movie, I just could not connect with that character. And that's unfortunate because he's the main protagonist. He should be the character that you look forward to watching on screen. But instead, I was looking forward to Pedro Pascal as Acacius. I was looking forward to Denzel Washington as Macronus. Like I was looking to other characters to get more enjoyment, and I really didn't care much for Paul Mescal's character of Lucius up until the first half. Then the second half, after he loses his mother or really finds out who he really is, that's kind of where I start really going more towards his side. And that's kind of where his performance, he actually starts finding his voice. Before, I think in the first half of the movie, Lucius, or as he goes by the name of Hano, he doesn't really have a voice. He just is just primal in nature. He kind of mumbles his words kind of under his breath. He doesn't really yell. And then by the end of the movie, again, he's leading a group of gladiators and he actually has a deeper voice. And so you actually start seeing the man that he's meant to be, the Prince of Rome. But again, it just sucks that the first half just didn't work for me from his character arc. And that kind of just, ruins it a little bit. Another con that I want to call out is there's actually a lot more characters in this film than compared to the first Gladiator. In the first film, you just have Russell Crowe, Connie Nielsen, and Joaquin Phoenix. Those are the three main characters. There's a couple of side characters that come out as well, but all those side characters actually add more color to the three main protagonists and antagonists of the film. In this movie, you have Pedro Pascal, Denzel Washington, Joseph Quinn, Connie Nielsen, you have Paul Mescal. So you have a lot more characters that are each getting their own type of plot. You're seeing their story kind of play out. And I kind of wish there would have been a lot more of a balance of all these characters. Reason being is that I feel like I wanted more information about the emperors. So the emperors in this film, instead of normally seeing, one emperor kind of take over in regards to Rome, in this film you have two brothers, basically Emperor Geta and you have Emperor Carcalla. You don't get an explanation as to why they took over. And I wanted that. I wanted that detail of, well, why did they allow two brothers to rule? Who decided this after what happened in the first film of Gladiator? Another moment that you also get to see is you find out that Lucius is the Prince of Rome. His mother is Lucilla, played by Connie Nielsen. And you get a moment where right after the death of Maximus, she ends up taking her son Lucius and then tells him that he needs to leave Rome because he's going to be under attack and he's going to be murdered or assassinated because everybody knows that he is the Prince of Rome. And so I really wanted to see more of that, though. I wanted to see more of the attempts of the assassinations because it just happened so quickly that I just didn't really feel like there was any danger at that moment. And so, again, those kind of aspects, I really wish they could have highlighted that. Instead, we got a lot of time with these characters like Macronus, or you got a lot of time with Lucius. And there's a lot of things that were going on that they did add to their story arcs, but I would have really appreciated to get a little bit more background around the emperors or around, Lucilla's decision to let her son go, how hard that could have been. So all this stuff, again, just kind of amounts to I wanted more detail and more background on what was going on with these characters. I have no problem with seeing multiple characters get story arcs, but I want them to all have an even amount. That way, by the time their story arc is completed, you feel fulfilled. And again, I didn't really feel like I connected that well with the emperors as well as the decision of Lucilla to let her son Lucius go as well. So again, that's just another con that I wanted to quickly call out. Again, it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the way that I felt as the story was playing out when I watched it in theaters. Okay, enough negative stuff for Gladiator 2. Let's dive into some positive stuff to talk about my favorite performance, favorite moment, and favorite shot. Let's start off with the favorite performance. There's two actors that I gotta call out. It's either Pedro Pascal as General Acacius, or you have Denzel Washington as Macronus. Both those characters, I called it out in my pro, they were the two characters that I was most invested in. I wanted to know where they were going, what they were up to. And again, each one did not disappoint. But if I had to choose one actor, I think I'm going to go with Denzel Washington as Macronus. I mean, his character was so cocky, so arrogant, so flamboyant. He had robes all the time. He had beautiful rings on his hands. He always was in control of conversations. But more importantly, He was always scheming. He was always trying to find ways to either collect truths, to collect more power, and eventually find his way to the throne. And his whole entire arc throughout the film was just, for me, it was just so well done. And Denzel Washington always performs well in any type of role that he's in. And I just really enjoyed his dialogue, the way that he was acting with other characters. My girlfriend did bring up a point where she felt that Denzel Washington's character of Macrinus was too modern, too much like real life, like how it is now, as compared to what it was like in Rome. And it's a good point. He definitely was the most unique character of all of the different types of characters that came out in Gladiator 2. But to me, I still enjoyed his performance. So again, my favorite actor and performance for Gladiator 2 is Denzel Washington as Macrinus. All right, moving on to favorite moment, bringing it back with Macrinus. He's involved in my favorite scene, but this one actually involves Macrinus versus Lucius. So at this moment, third act of the movie, this is really the final battle. But what's so cool about this is you see Macrinus now facing off against Lucius. And Lucius is basically telling him that he now knows who he is. He is the Prince of Rome, and he is going to do whatever it takes to stop men like Macrinus from taking over. And Macrinus ends up saying some type of dialogue like, "No, you don't understand, Lucius. The gods have decided that I am meant to take over as emperor and to rule Rome." And then you have Lucius reply, "No, I think the gods have sent me to take you down." I'm pretty sure I butchered all of that dialogue, but that's like the essence of what they were going back and forth for. Then they have an epic face off. And what's so cool is that their battle doesn't even take place in the Coliseum. It takes place on the road to the Coliseum. It takes place like on the outskirts of Rome. I really enjoyed that though. Again, it just made it feel much more, real and raw. So really enjoyed that moment between Macrinus and Lucius. And then my favorite shot of the movie has got to be when Lucius has now, again, he's going to defend his mother's honor. He's now accepted that he is the Prince of Rome, and he goes into the Colosseum, and you just see from behind Paul Mescal, you see him walking into the Colosseum, into the white sands, and you see the Roman army surrounding his character. And it just looks like such a beautiful shot because, again, you see Paul Mescal walking very slowly, and the camera starts kind of zooming out, and then you see the Roman army just kind of surrounding him, not letting him escape at any moment. And so just a beautiful shot. There's a lot of different types of cinematography that is just very well done in Gladiator 2, but this specific shot was my favorite of the movie. All right, guys, those are my pros and cons and my favorite things that I really enjoyed about Gladiator 2. Now it is time to decide, is Gladiator 2 timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie over and over and over again? As of today, I have got to say that Gladiator 2 is not a timeless movie. Again, I liked a lot of what I saw when I checked out this movie, but like you heard from some of my cons, me just not being invested in this world, me not being invested in the main protagonist, and it just like the way that they just didn't explain some of the different types of details of why these emperors came to be or why there were certain decisions made. I feel like it just kind of puts the story in a position where it leaves you wanting more in a kind of sour way. I still like the movie. I still would recommend people check this movie out just because I think it has a lot of great action in it, and it has a lot of great sequences that I think people will enjoy, and performances from Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal are still top notch. But what hurts this movie so much is I think because it's a sequel to Gladiator, and Gladiator is a timeless movie, you have no other way but to compare it. And as soon as you start comparing it, you start noticing, well, the music doesn't hit the same. The way that the emotional moments in the Gladiator, they just do not hit the same in the sequel. There's just so many different things where I would just much prefer to watch the first Gladiator movie. So that's the unfortunate part. Is again, I still enjoyed the experience that I had watching Gladiator 2, but there's just a lot of things that I wish could have done a little bit better to make this an amazing film and at least match the first one. It was never going to exceed it. I mean, it has the chance. Nothing's impossible, but just by watching the trailer and just by watching it already once, it's just so hard to match up with what was already a amazing masterpiece in Gladiator. But those are my thoughts, guys. That's my opinion. Gladiator 2 is not a timeless movie. Still an enjoyable watch and still something that I would want folks to check out. But what are your guys' thoughts? Have you had a chance to check out Gladiator 2? And if you have, let me know. Did you enjoy it? Am I crazy for thinking that I couldn't connect with Paul Mescal's character of Hanno or Lucius? Let me know in the comments or in the reviews down below. And let me know if you thought Gladiator 2 was timeless. All right, guys, appreciate you staying all the way through to listen to my full breakdown and thoughts about Gladiator 2. This is just part one of the Glicked weekend. That is right. Glicked is here. It is Gladiator and Wicked, both movies coming out on the same weekend. And so you better believe that the next review is going to be about Wicked. All right, guys, my name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 98 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out the next episode where we will be covering and breaking down Wicked and seeing if we enjoyed it and if we consider it timeless. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.